Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to be doing a dinner prep, so this is going to be a two-part stream. We are going to prep our roast beef and our baked potatoes for tonight. So we've got this is a bottom round roast that we're going to be prepping. So let's start by chopping up an onion. So we're going to cut the ends off, and then we're going to take our kind of orange skin off in this last ring around. And then toss this to the side. I'm going to try to do 4 slices of like kind of onion rings. And this is kind of what we're going to be resting the roast on. And I'm going to be cooking it in, this is a cast iron roasting pan. So this is going to be kind of like our base for it, which will also bring in a nice little oniony flavor as well as flavor the drippings. And now we're going to prep up some fresh garlic. So I'm going to first kind of cut off the ends on both sides. That way we can kind of de-shell them or whatnot. I will say, fresh garlic, while delicious, is a pain to prep. So we're going to get it out of all of these little like papery shells so that we can mince it up for our roast beef. Now we're just going to be doing kind of a simple roast with rosemary, thyme, black pepper, fresh garlic, and salt, and a little bit of olive oil, which we'll rub on our bottom round roast. And then we'll pop it in the oven and we'll do like a 15-minute sear at a 425. And then you turn it down to 350 and you cook it for the rest of the time. So let's get this garlic out. See, this is why when I don't have garlic being like a star or a prime part of it, I always just use the minced garlic in the jar because it saves time. But there are times when you need fresh garlic where it's just better. And this is the one where it is better. Okay, we've got all that work for like 5 little cloves. We've got a couple more to go. You see, it's never fun, but it is better. And if you don't know that, the way you cut your garlic will actually let you know how much flavor you're getting out of it. So leaving it in the whole clove allows the least amount of flavor. And then slicing it in like little circles brings out like a middle amount of flavor. And then mincing it brings out a strong flavor, and then grating it brings out the most. But we're going to use this we're prepping it for our roast beef dinner tonight with some baked potatoes. And I have like a special trick that kind of makes my baked potatoes always turn out like restaurant quality. And I'll show you that in just a second. Once I get these skins off. Oh, this one seemed to have a lot in it. But the cut of meat we're using is a bottom round. You could also, for a roast beef dinner, that's going to be the one that you're going to slice thinly. But here's our bottom round. It's about 4.5 pounds. And that's what we're going to be using for our roast beef dinner tonight, because we'll slice it thinly, and it'll just be like that nice thin roast beef dinner. And hopefully we'll have enough juices to make a good au juice with it to drizzle over. Okay, let's start with these and see if we need any more. So we're going to kind of mince them up. So we're going to just start by slicing them all really thinly. We'll just kind of go over it. But I was reading up on them, and apparently if you use like a thin grater and you grate your garlic into a paste, it yields the strongest garlic flavor.
Have you ever heard of elephant garlic?
I have heard of elephant garlic. I've never used it, but I have heard of it.
Someone in the chat said it's a lifesaver.
It's probably, if I'm the way I think, I've heard it being used before, but I bet you it's probably really big garlic, which would mean less peeling. It's kind of like shallots and onions. It's like, while shallots are delicious and are great, you gotta peel them a lot, and they're so tiny.
I was just wondering about the potency.
Yeah, true. It's kind of like if you know how when you go to the store and you guys get avocados and they have two types of avocados, the Haas ones, which are what most people get, and then sometimes you'll have these really big ones. They're not as good. They're very watery, I found. They're different, like, species of avocado, but they're not as good. Got to stick with the Haas. Okay, so now we're going over it. You can see we've got a nice little chop on here. And we're just going to keep going over until we have a really nice mince in it, because we're going to be rubbing this all over our roast. Okay, there we
A
go.
lot of people are saying it's more mild.
Okay, I could see that. Typically, the bigger things are, the more mild they are. So I could see that. There we go. We're going to go over a couple of times. What I like to do when I'm mincing is I use this hand as my like base to put down, and then I kind of rock my other hand up and down. This allows you to put a lot of pressure behind your chop and then go over, which gives you a really nice mince, because this isn't very good. So we're going to go over. You can smell the fresh garlic does smell delicious. I know it. You can't smell it, but it is lovely. Okay. Perfect. So here is our beautiful fresh garlic. Let's get our roast here. And before I grab, let's get all of our spices ready. So we've got rosemary, dried thyme, and black pepper and salt. Now, you could use fresh rosemary and thyme, but you'd want to use double the amount. Dry herbs have a bit more potency, but fresh is also great. We're going to start by giving this roast a nice cover it with a little bit of olive oil. This is going to allow it to have a nice kind of crisp outer skin, and as well as adhere the spices to it. And we're going to kind of rub our garlic all the way around. We'll do the other side in just a second. We're going to get all this on one side, kind of pat it in. And then we're going to take our thyme and we're going to do a nice sprinkle over it. You're going to use probably between 1 and 2 teaspoons. And then we're going to use our rosemary and do a nice sprinkle too. We're going to use a little bit less rosemary because rosemary is pretty potent, and a little goes a long way. And now we're going to take our black pepper, and we're also going to do a nice little dust, because you remember this has got to season the meat all the way through. So it's going to have more seasoning on the outside, but that's because the inside is going to kind of sink in. And now we're using some coarse salt. We're going to push it down. And now we're going to flip this side and we're going to put it on top of our onions. So that is our seasoned size up. And I'm putting my fat side up. That way, when it cooks, the fat will drip into the meat and keeping it nice and tender. So very important. I'm just getting some of this excess garlic right there, and I'm putting it on. Now we're going to take up the rest of this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a couple slits in my fat. And this is so I can kind of put a little bit of my seasoning down in here. There we go. Because that way it can really sink in here. Put a little bit of that, stuff these from our plate that we had extra into some of those slits. Now we're going to take the rest of this garlic. We're going to rub it all the way around. Make sure you get some on the sides too. Perfect. Make sure I got all this garlic. We're not wasting it. I put the time in to chop it up and mince it. We're going to use it. And then we're going to do the same. I'm going to start with my thyme first, and we're going to do a nice sprinkling all the way around.
Question, what kind of meat?
This is a bottom round roast. It's about 4.5 pounds. Beautiful. So you want a nice good sprinkle. I always like to do the thyme first because I want to see the coverage of it. And now we're going to use a little bit of rosemary. We're just going to sprinkle it around. Now, if you're doing fresh, you want to use twice as much because it's not quite as potent. And, when they dry, they get smaller, so they dehydrate. So you're actually using more fresh, like the dried is actually more than what it would be in fresh. And now we're going to sprinkle it with the black pepper, making sure to get your big side over here. And then on the top, I used coarse salt on the bottom. I'm going to use our just regular salt on the top. There we go. Spread it. Perfect. And this is our lovely roast. I'm going to wash my hands and then I'm going to pop that in the oven. Okay. So I have my oven preheated to 425 degrees. And what we're going to do is you pop it in the oven and for 15 minutes, you let it sear off really nice at a high temp. And then we're going to turn it down to about between 325 and 350. If your oven isn't as hot, you're going to want to do closer to 350. People know their ovens. Sometimes they're a little wonky. Like I find this oven is not as accurate as my other one. So I always put it up about 10 degrees hotter on this one versus that one. But ovens are wonky until you get to know them. You just kind of adjust it. But it's going to be 325 is what we want. But again, adjust it to what your oven is since they're all a little wonky. Now, let me take this. And we're going to do our potatoes. We're going to make them delicious. So first, I've got 6 big russet potatoes. So you want russet and you want to give them a really good scrub. And because you want them to be wet when you're going to wrap them up because that's going to seal in your moisture and it's going to give you a mashed potato that isn't dry and flaky. So we're going to go through and we're just going to stab it with our fork all the way around. The reason you stab your potatoes is that you don't want them to burst. So if they don't have a slit in their skin or a break in it, the steam can build up inside your potato and it pops open, which then will lead to a dry baked potato. I mean, it won't be ruined, but it will just be more dry. And you want to be able to mash it up nicely with some butter and sour cream and not have a dry one. So giving it some good stabs. And I find got to do big potatoes because they're just so much better. And who doesn't love a baked potato? So we got them all stabbed up here. Okay. Now I'm going to we're going to get 6 sheets of aluminum foil, 1 for each potato. And this is going to help seal the moisture in when baking. And that's important to give you that really nice kind of restaurant quality baked potato.
You got a question. How's the little guy with the fever?
He is doing, I will say, fever's down a little bit, but he is very cranky. Nothing seems to make him happy right now, except he is playing with his older brother, which is his, whenever he gets home and Jack can play with Torrin, he's very, very happy. But he was unhappy about everything. He wanted me to hold him, but then he wanted to play over in his tent. And I was like, I can't hold you and you play in your tent. He was just sad about everything today, which we were going to go to a baseball game this evening. And I was just like, I'm not going to take him. It's like 50 degrees and it would have been miserable. But I'm hoping that he's better because we've got 2 soccer games tomorrow and another one on Sunday. And unfortunately, he'll be coming along. Okay, we're going to take our potato. We're going to put it in the middle. And then you're going to take a small pat of butter. You're going to stick it on the top. And then you're going to dust it with a little bit of coarse salt. And this is going to cook into your potato and make it absolutely delicious and tender. And if you're like me and you love to eat potato skins, This makes the best tasting potato skin, and the bottom of it is like a nice crispy potato skin. It is delicious. Now, I know not everybody likes to eat their potato skins, but it has the most nutrients, the most nutritious part of the potato. So maybe you should try. I am the only one in my family who likes to eat it. None of my kids do. My mom does. So put it on, wrap it up. And what I do is wrap it up, and then you're going to put the wrapped up part up top, and always put it on a baking sheet, because sometimes the butter will ooze out, and if it's on a baking sheet, you won't have butter at the bottom of your oven and won't have a mess to clean up, because when butter overspills, it smokes. So you also don't want to set off any fire alarms. Perfect. Wrap this guy up.
You got a question? Did you pierce the potatoes?
Yes, I did. I pierced them several times with the fork so that they wouldn't explode, because that's what happens is the heat gets trapped inside. So you want to, when I'm doing my potatoes, you want to first give them a good scrub down, and then they're so wet, and that's what we want. We want them nice and wet when we're going in, because it will seal in some extra moisture and make for a much more tender potato. And then we pierce them all the way around, and now we're putting a little pat of butter, and then we're sprinkling some coarse salt on it. And I always say you want to do coarse, because if you try to pour this on, too much always comes out. So coarse is you can see the few things, but it doesn't get overly salty. And last but not least, and you don't need much butter. It's very, I think we used maybe 2 tablespoons max between the 6 potatoes. And these are big potatoes. There we go. I'll wrap this guy up. And then I'm going to pop this one in the oven with my roast that's set at 435. It's fine because we're going to be turning it down to about 325, and these will slow cook. And you want to have them slow cook for about an hour and a half, which is perfect timing with our roast. It's one of those things that work out nicely. So we're going to pop this in our oven, and then our last thing we've got to do is we're going to put our Dutch ovens in our other oven to warm up at 500 degrees, because we're going to be baking up our fresh loaves. So I've got my 2 ovens. Here's my 2 Dutch ovens that we're going to use. This one's for my loaf, and my round one. I'm going to pop them in the oven and set it for 500 degrees. The reason why, if you're new to making it or whatnot, is you want your Dutch oven to be really hot when you put it in, because, or when you're baking your bread, because it mimics like a true bread oven. And so you'll start with your sourdough bread. You want to start with a hot pot. You don't want to start with a cold one. So you put them in here and you preheat and you bake it for at 500 degrees for an hour. That's what I've always done. Sometimes I've cut it a little short and it's fine, but you want to make sure that it is nice and hot, because the longer you bake it, the heat stays in there. So it's not like, oh, it's 500, it's done. And that way, when you're transferring your sourdough loaves into it and you seal it back up, it's going to mimic one of those nice bread ovens, and it will trap the moisture in, but it will also give a very even heat to cook it, which is what you want, because you don't want a burnt bottom or a top. Well, guys, we are done with our dinner prep. So we'll be back in about an hour to finish up the rest of dinner. So don't forget to join back, but also don't forget to like and subscribe. We try to do live cooking every day, and I want you to be here to finish off the rest of dinner with us tonight. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to come back in